They called her the Invisible Maid, a ghost in the grand halls of Blackwood Manor. What the aristocracy didn't know was that this ghost held a secret that could dismantle a dukedom. According to private estate ledgers dated April 18 to 17, the financial ruin of the House of Beaumont was a carefully guarded conspiracy, a truth one woman was about to expose. But before we get to the public humiliation that would rock the peerage, you need to understand the damning evidence she discovered in the Duke's private conservatory. It changed everything. The grand ballroom of Blackwood Manor, nestled in the heart of Wiltshire, was a predator's jungle disguised by silk and candlelight. 100 of the most beautiful and well-dowered ladies in England glided across the parquet floor, their smiles as sharp as their ambitions. They were here for one prize: Alistair Beaumont, the Duke of Blackwood. But Alistair wasn't watching them. His gaze kept drifting past the glittering diamonds and practiced curtsies to the shadows along the wall, where a young woman with ink stains on her fingers moved with quiet efficiency. Ilara Vance was a creature of the periphery. For 3 years, she had served in the Beaumont household, her official title being a lady's maid, but her true duties were far more varied. She was the one they called when the Dowager Duchess's prized orchids wilted or when a ledger refused to balance. She was meant to be unseen, unheard, a functioning part of the manor's machinery. According to Dr. Julian Finch, a social historian specializing in 19th century aristocratic households, servants were often the most informed and least powerful individuals within an estate, a fact Ilara understood in her bones. She knew, for instance, that the Duke's cravat was tied just a little too tightly tonight, a sign of his profound discomfort. She knew the champagne was of a slightly lesser vintage than last year's, a subtle clue to the estate's precarious finances. Alistair felt the weight of 100 pairs of eyes on him, each assessing his title, his fortune, his eligibility. His mother, the Dowager Duchess, had been clear. "You will choose tonight, Alistair. The estate is bleeding money. We require an alliance, a significant one." His father's disastrous investments in the East India Company, detailed in secret correspondence Alistair had found, had left them teetering on the edge of ruin. It was a secret they guarded more fiercely than the family jewels. Lady Serafina Volkov, daughter of a baron whose wealth came from industry, not inheritance, was the undeniable frontrunner. She was a vision in crimson silk, her wit as sharp as her cheekbones. "Your Grace," as she murmured as he took her hand for a waltz. "You look as though you're facing a firing squad." He managed a thin smile. "Merely overwhelmed by the beauty on display, Lady Serafina." "Of course," she replied, her dark eyes missing nothing. "Duty can be such a burden, can't it?" It was then that it happened. A young footman, no older than 16, stumbled, sending a tray of crystal glasses crashing to the floor. A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. The boy froze, his face ashen with terror. Before the head butler could descend upon him, Ilara was there. She knelt, speaking to the boy in a low, calm voice, ignoring the shards of glass. She helped him to his feet, placed a hand on his arm for just a moment, a gesture of quiet solidarity, before beginning to efficiently clear the mess. She moved with a grace that was entirely unself-conscious, her focus absolute. And in that moment, Alistair saw her, truly saw her, not as a servant, but as the only person in the entire suffocating room who was completely, authentically herself. The waltz ended. He excused himself, his heart pounding a strange, unfamiliar rhythm. He needed air. He found it on the cool stone of the West Terrace, which overlooked the moonlight garden, a secluded space filled with pale, night-blooming flowers, a personal project of his late grandmother. He wasn't alone. Ilara was there, kneeling by a bed of moonflowers, her cap set aside. She was murmuring to the plants, her fingers gently coaxing a drooping stem. "There now," she whispered. "You're not meant for all that noise and light. You just need a bit of quiet to thrive." She spoke as if the flower were a kindred spirit. "A philosophy we could all learn from," Alistair said softly. She shot to her feet, her eyes wide with alarm. A curtsy was automatic, her face flushing. "Your Grace, forgive me. I was just checking on my grandmother's flowers," he finished, his voice gentle. "I should be thanking you. No one has tended this garden with such care since she passed." She relaxed fractionally, though she kept her eyes lowered. They were looking neglected. They respond to attention. "As do people, I imagine," he said. the words feeling truer than anything he had said all night. He gestured to the flower. You know their names. I read about them in your library. The admission was a risk, and they both knew it. Servants weren't typically encouraged to use the main library. And what have you learned? He asked, genuinely curious. I've learned that some of the most beautiful things are also the most resilient, she said, finally meeting his gaze. Her eyes were a clear, steady gray, and that sometimes the most potent remedies grow in the shadows, not in the manicured beds. The comment hung in the air, a clear metaphor for the scene they'd just left inside. We've all faced moments where doing the right thing meant risking everything. For Elara, simply speaking her mind to the Duke was a gamble that could cost her livelihood. Before he could respond, Lady Seraphina's voice cut through the night. Alistair, are you out here? Elara's professional mask slammed back into place. Your Grace, she murmured, grabbing her cap and melting back toward the servants' entrance, becoming invisible once more. Seraphina appeared on the terrace, her crimson dress a slash of color against the pale stone. There you are. I was worried you'd been carried off by a desperate debutante. Her eyes flickered to the empty space where Elara had just stood. Enjoying the air? Something like that, Alistair replied, his mind replaying Elara's words. The most potent remedies grow in the shadows. The night ended with a choice unmade, but a seed of rebellion had been planted in the Duke's heart. He had spent his life fulfilling his duty, but for the first time, he wondered if his duty was to his title or to the truth he'd just glimpsed in a quiet garden. What he didn't know was that Lady Seraphina had seen the look in his eyes, and she was already planning how to eliminate the weed she'd just discovered growing in her path. In the week that followed, Alistair found excuses. A rare book on botany needed to be located in the library. A series of old estate maps required cataloging. Each task, conveniently, required the assistance of Miss Vance. In the quiet, dusty world of the library, the fragile connection from the garden began to bloom. He discovered she wasn't just a reader. She possessed a startlingly analytical mind. While reviewing old ledgers, a task she performed with meticulous neatness, she paused. Your Grace, forgive me, but this column is miscalculated. The grain yields from the North pasture from 1815 are recorded twice. Alistair checked. She was right. It was a small error, but one that had been overlooked by his father and his estate manager for years. An estate document dated March 15, 1815 confirms her correction. Alistair would later write in his private journal, "It was the first time I realized her intelligence was not merely observational, but deeply practical." How did you learn to do this? He asked, amazed. My father was a merchant before he lost his way, she said, her voice quiet. He taught me numbers. He said they were the one language that never lied. Their conversations deepened. She spoke of her dream to one day own a small apothecary using the knowledge of herbs passed down from her mother. He spoke of his own dream to implement modern agricultural reforms, to improve the lives of his tenants, a dream constantly thwarted by the estate's secret debt. You're trying to pour water into a bucket with a hole in it, she said one afternoon, her directness breathtaking. You can't build a future on a rotten foundation. It was a truth he knew, but had been unwilling to face. Talking to her was like a splash of cold, clear water. She saw not the Duke, but the man, weighed down by impossible burdens. Stay with me. This is where the story takes a darker turn. Lady Seraphina was no fool. She observed the Duke's frequent trips to the library, his newly focused, almost hopeful expression. She saw the way his eyes would find Elara in a crowded room. According to the memoirs of her own lady's maid, later published posthumously, Lady Seraphina had a policy. Identify the threat, isolate it, and then eliminate it. She saw Miss Vance not as a rival for the Duke's heart, but as an obstacle to her ambition. Her first move was subtle. She began spending time in the library herself, engaging Alistair in brilliant conversations about politics and finance. She presented him with a detailed proposal for consolidating the estate's debts, a plan that was both intelligent and ruthless. She was demonstrating her value, positioning herself as the solution to all his problems. When that didn't entirely dissuade him from his conversations with Elara, Seraphina's strategy shifted. One evening, Elara found a small, exquisitely embroidered silk pouch on her modest bed in the servants' quarters. Inside was a pair of pearl earrings. There was no note, Confused and alarmed, she immediately took them to the head housekeeper, Mrs. Gable. "These are not mine. I believe they were left in my room by mistake." Mrs. Gable, a stern but fair woman, recognized them. "These belong to Lady Seraphina. She reported them missing this morning." The housekeeper's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "How did they come to be in your room, Miss Vance?" "I don't know," Alara said, her heart sinking. "I found them just now." The accusation was unspoken but hung heavy in the air. The incident was logged. A warning was issued. Historical records from the Wiltshire County Archives show that accusations of theft against servants, particularly female servants, were overwhelmingly believed. Data shows that in over 80% of such cases in the 1810s, the servant was dismissed without references, a sentence to poverty or worse. Alara knew she was being targeted. She understood the game. But what could she do? Her word against the ladies was worth nothing. The real scandal was just beginning. A few days later, Alistair found her in the conservatory, her hands trembling as she repotted a fern. "What is it, Alara? What's wrong?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. She told him about the earrings, the accusation, the chilling certainty that this was Lady Seraphina's doing. "She is trying to have me dismissed," Alara whispered, her composure finally cracking. "She is weaving a web, and I am walking right into it." Alistair felt a surge of cold fury. "I won't let that happen." He reached out, taking her hand. His skin was warm against hers. "I'll speak to her. I will end this." "No." Alara pulled her hand back, though the lingering warmth was a painful reminder of what she couldn't have. "You can't. Defending me will only confirm her suspicions and fuel the gossip. It will create a scandal that will harm you far more than me. You have a duty to this estate, to your family. You must announce your engagement to her. It's the only logical choice." "Logic be damned," he said, his voice raw. "I am tired of making the logical choice. I am tired of my duty." "Alara, He stopped, but the words were in his eyes. "Don't," she pleaded. "Don't say it. It will only make the end more painful." Little did she know, someone was watching from the shadows of the conservatory door. Lady Seraphina had heard every word, and now she knew that a simple frame-up for theft would not be enough. She needed something more permanent, something that would destroy Alara's credibility so completely that the Duke would have no choice but to abandon her. What would you do in this situation? Would you have the courage to fight for love, or would you bow to the pressures of duty and society? It's a question that defined an entire era. The trap was sprung 3 days before the summer ball, the night Alistair was expected to announce his choice. The Dowager Duchess summoned Alara to her private sitting room. Lady Seraphina was also present, her expression a mask of gentle concern. "Miss Vance," the Duchess began, her voice cold as ice, "an extremely serious accusation has been made. A letter has been discovered." She slid a piece of paper across the polished mahogany table. Alara picked it up. Her blood ran cold. It was written on plain paper, but the handwriting was a passable imitation of her own. It was addressed to the Duke. The letter was a masterpiece of malicious fiction. It claimed she was with child, his child. It spoke of secret meetings and promises made. It ended with a thinly veiled threat: acknowledge her and the child, or she would expose him to the entire world. "This is a lie," Alara said, her voice shaking but firm. "I did not write this." "Really?" Seraphina's voice was soft, laced with pity. "Because the letter was found in your room, tucked inside your personal book of poetry, the very book the Duke has been seen reading with you in the library." "It's a forgery," Alara insisted, her mind racing. How could she prove it? According to Dr. Margaret Thornberry, an expert on Regency-era inheritance law, a claim of an illegitimate heir, even if false, could tie up an estate in legal battles for years, a fact the Duchess knew all too well. The scandal alone would be devastating. The Duchess's face was a stony mask of aristocratic fury. "I have tolerated the rumors. I have overlooked your familiarity with my son. But this is an attack on our very name. You are a viper we have harbored in our home. I swear to you, on my mother's memory, I did not write this," Alara pleaded, turning to Seraphina. "Lady Seraphina, you know this is untrue." Seraphina met her gaze, and for a fleeting second, Alara saw a flicker of triumph in her eyes before it was replaced by sorrow. I wish I could believe you, I truly do. For the Duke's sake. But the evidence. She let the sentence hang. The truth was more disturbing than anyone in the room could imagine. This wasn't just a social scheme. It was a calculated act of destruction. You will be dismissed at dawn, the Duchess declared, without references. You will be escorted to the county line and told never to return. Consider yourself fortunate I am not handing you over to the authorities for blackmail. Elara stood, her dignity a fragile shield against their condemnation. She looked at the forged letter again, a desperate, forensic part of her brain taking over. She noticed something, a faint purplish-brown hue to the ink and a subtle, almost peppery scent clinging to the paper. It wasn't standard iron gall ink. She'd seen it before. Remember that detail. It becomes crucial. She was confined to her room for the night, a guard posted outside her door. Despair was a suffocating blanket. She had lost. She had lost her position, her reputation, and any hope of a future. But as she sat on her cot, the memory of that strange ink tugged at her. It was from a plant, a specific one, Atropa belladonna, deadly nightshade. It produced a berry that could be crushed to create a distinctive, unstable ink, an ink an amateur botanist might experiment with, an ink made from a plant that grew in only one place on the entire estate, a secluded, shaded corner of the gardens near the Folly, a place Lady Seraphina was known to favor for her botanical sketching. Hope, fierce and desperate, flared in her chest. She had no proof, only a theory. But it was something. She had to get a message to Alistair. She tore a strip from her hem and, using a loose thread dipped in soot from the unlit candle, she wrote a single frantic message, Nightshade. The ink is from the Nightshade by the Folly. Check her sketching kit. But how to get it to him? The guard was unbribable. Her one friend, a young maid named Annie, had been forbidden from speaking to her. The house was locked down against her. This could happen to anyone who challenged the powerful. It happened more often than history books admit. Alistair was in his study, a glass of brandy untouched before him, when his mother delivered the news of Elara's dismissal. He felt the floor drop out from beneath him. She was framed, he said, his voice a low growl. This is Seraphina's doing. You are blinded by a foolish infatuation, his mother retorted. The evidence is clear. The matter is closed. You will prepare to announce your engagement to Lady Seraphina at the ball tomorrow night. It is the only way to quell the scandal she has so graciously agreed to overlook. He was trapped. Any public defense of Elara would be seen as an admission of guilt. He spent the night in a torment of indecision. He could defy his mother, refuse to marry Seraphina, and cause a scandal that would confirm the estate's ruin. Or he could sacrifice Elara, the only person who had ever seen the man behind the title, and live a lie for the rest of his life. At dawn, as a carriage was being prepared to take Elara away in disgrace, a small folded piece of cloth was pressed into Alistair's hand. It was from Annie, the young maid, who had risked her own position to slip past the guard. From Miss Vance, she whispered, her eyes wide with fear, before scurrying away. He unfolded the scrap of linen. Nightshade. The ink is from the Nightshade by the Folly. Check her sketching kit. Everything clicked into place. Seraphina's feigned interest in botany, her frequent walks to the Folly. It was a desperate gamble, but it was the only one he had. The official solicitor's investigation report, filed later, would state this moment as the turning point. That night, the ballroom was even more brilliant than before, buzzing with anticipation. Alistair stood beside his mother and a radiant Lady Seraphina, preparing to make his announcement. The entire aristocracy of England held its breath. He raised his glass. My lords, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. Tonight I have an important announcement to make regarding the future of the House of Beaumont. He looked directly at Seraphina, whose smile was one of perfect, triumphant beauty. But first, Alistair continued, his voice ringing with sudden authority, I must address a matter of grave importance, a matter of a crime committed within these walls, the crime of malicious falsehood and forgery. A shocked silence fell over the room. The Dowager Duchess shot him a look of pure fury. Seraphina's smile faltered. A letter was recently forged in an attempt to ruin an innocent woman, Alistair declared, his eyes locked on Seraphina. A letter written not with common ink, but with a unique ink made from the berries of the Atropa belladonna plant. He paused, letting the words sink in. A plant which, our head gardener will confirm, grows in only one spot on this estate, cuttings of which were requested only last week by one person for her botanical sketches. He produced a small leather-bound sketching kit, a kit which, upon inspection by the constable this afternoon, was found to contain not only sketches of the nightshade plant, but also a vial of this very ink and several practice sheets of the forgery. Seraphina's face had gone bone white. The crowd erupted into a maelstrom of whispers. Her father, the Baron, pushed through the crowd, his face purple with rage. The game was over. In her first-person account, Alara, who was watching from a hidden gallery where Alistair had placed her, later described the moment. It was not triumph I felt, but a profound sadness. Justice had been served, but the cost was a ruin of a different kind, a public tearing of the social fabric. The Volkovs left London in disgrace by morning. The scandal was immense, but it was Seraphina's, not Alistair's. He had defended the honor of an innocent, a move that, while shocking, earned him a grudging respect. But the happy ending was not so simple. The estate's financial crisis remained. The Dowager Duchess was appalled by the public spectacle, and Alara, though vindicated, was still a servant. In the quiet aftermath, Alistair came to her not in the library, but in the garden. He didn't offer her a title. He offered her a partnership. I am still on the brink of ruin, he said, his honesty stark. Marrying me will not be a fairy tale. It will be hard work. I need your mind, Alara, your practicality, your strength. Help me save this place. Be my Duchess, not because of duty, but because we are stronger together. Her acceptance was quiet but firm. Their marriage was a scandal, but they weathered it. The path forward was not easy. They faced social ostracism and financial hardship, but together they began to rebuild. Alara's knowledge of botany led to profitable apothecary sales. Her sharp mind for numbers helped restructure the estate's finances, ensuring true financial transparency. They established a scholarship fund for the tenants' children, promoting youth literacy and ensuring education access. Their joint focus on sustainable stewardship and support for local craftsmanship slowly rebuilt community trust. Years later, the House of Beaumont was more prosperous than ever. Its foundation was not a wealthy dowry, but something far more valuable, a partnership built on respect, truth, and a love that had bloomed against all odds in the shadows. Their story became a quiet legend, a testament to their philanthropic legacy, a reminder that the greatest worth isn't in a title, but in the unwavering integrity of one's character. If this story of integrity against all odds moved you, subscribe for more historical revelations. The truth always matters.